Hi guys, this what you see is a car alternator, Valeo, from an Ascent car. Now the rating of this alternator is 13.5 volts, 90 amperes, Valeo. Now guys, the alternators are usually high RPM ranging from 2000 to 5000 RPMs. So in this video what I'm going to do is perform a small trick with which the RPM will reduce considerably. I personally call that technique manual forced voltage injection. Step 1. Removing the back cover. Back cover removed. What I'm going to tell you guys is very important before we proceed to the next part. So this part what you see is obviously for the brush. So there are two brushes feeding electricity to the slip rings of the rotor. That is obvious part. Okay, you see this green wire? I attached it manually to modify it in one of my previous videos, link for which will also be provided in the description. Now you see that there are two brushes and I have connected wire to only the lower case brush and not the upper case. That is because internally the uppercase brush is directly connected to the body of the alternator as negative. We know that the body is negative and the longest terminal called the B is the main output positive. So this long terminal B is positive, body is negative, and the upper brush is also negative. So internally somehow this upper brush is in short circuit with the body of the alternator. So with that being clear, let's proceed to the next part. Now guys, the next part is that because the upper brush is connected to the body of the alternator, all I have to do is connect positive terminal to this part and use a 3.7 volts battery and connect the negative terminal to the body of the alternator, and this is going to excite the rotor winding of the alternator, which means the electromagnetic rotor inside is going to get excited if I connect the positive terminal. This one is positive. Connect the positive terminal like this and negative to this one. This is connected to the body of the alternator, so this is also negative. And there is a little spark that I can see but you cannot. So this is how the rotor will get excited. Okay. Now guys, this what you see is a very old antique fan speed regulator. You see? So the reason I am showing you this is because of its filament. Now guys, you see this filament? It is very useful. So let's cut it off. Now guys, this alternator that you see is a self-excited type, which means that the rotor automatically gets excited without any external input from the battery. Okay, so I am going to achieve that state with the help of this resistor. Okay, you see this positive wire that I'm manually connected to the lower brush. So what I will do is wound this on the positive wire and connect its other end to the positive long B terminal. So let's do that. So the positive main terminal, output terminal of the alternator has been electrically connected to the lower brush terminal feeding the rotor. Okay, now this alternator is in automatic self-excitation mode. Let me show you this first. And now all I have to do is run this and it is going to get automatically self-excited. But to show you that, I will have to connect a multimeter. So let's do that also. Taking the traditional old multimeter and pointing it towards 20 volts DC mode. Okay, these are the two terminals. Let's connect it to the alternator. Now guys, the multimeter will be connected to the main output terminals of the alternator. And which are the main output terminals? Body being the negative and long terminal being the positive. Positive means red, connected to the red terminal. Done. Negative means black, will be connected to this terminal or any other part. I will connect it to this. Although it is not clearly visible, so let's connect it to this. Now the alternator has been electrically connected to the multimeter. Okay, so guys, now comes the rope rotation test, and this is the rope roll. Let's wound the thread on the pulley of the alternator. Now guys, the thing with this alternator is that it is not going to generate anything as long as the RPM is slow. So let's do that first. Guys, keep watching the multimeter screen. Okay, go. It is still slow. Now let's give it another try. Once more, guys. So guys, what we can learn from this is that it is not possible to attain self-excitation by human hand rotation. Although I did achieve this self-excitation in one of my previous projects. So guys, that was the first method of achieving self-excitation, which was not possible to achieve with human hands. So let's get to the second method. So in this, let's remove this resistive wire, not needed anymore. And for this step, I'm going to need some jumper cables, okay, available on Banggood's, link is in the description. One 3.7 volts lithium ion battery and two neodymium magnets, very strong. Although if you don't have these strong ones, you can also use a little weaker ones. They are also going to work too. So guys, here I'm going to use the black and red cables from all of these. Okay, this one is black. Yeah, black is out. And red, which is out also. And I have to remove all these. After which, I have to take the battery and place one magnet, neodymium magnet, on the positive side, which is this one. Okay, the positive. That being done, let's proceed to the negative. Other magnet on the negative. Now this is also done. Okay, measure the battery voltage pointing towards 20 volts DC mode to make sure that it is charged, plus and minus, and you can see that it is charged, showing 3.86 volts DC. Pretty good charged, in fact. Now take the jumper cables, both red and black. Remove the first one's insulation cover, okay, as well as the second one, only on one side, and then stick it black to negative and red to positive. Okay, this side is negative, black is negative, so yeah, connected, and here this positive connected. Now there should be voltage on these two terminals, and yes, it is. Okay, yeah, negative has also been connected. Now the multimeter is only going to measure the output of the alternator. So now comes the part of connecting the battery to the alternator electrically. So black, you already know, is the negative, which will be connected to the body of the alternator. Okay, black has been connected, negative, negative, and positive will be connected to this green terminal. But before I connect it, I must tell you that this is an uncontrolled forced voltage injection method. Uncontrolled, which is very important. So let's connect that. There will be a little spark, I guess, but I'm not able to see it here because it is very bright. Now let's wound the thread on the shaft of this alternator and see some voltage reflected. Give it a turn. Yeah, you see the voltage is being generated pretty good, 2 volts, 3 volts and all. Let's run it with rope rotation test. Keep watching the screen, guys. go. You saw somewhere around 8 volts. Now the disadvantage is that when the alternator starts generating electricity, it will feed 12 volts to this 3.7 volts battery pack, which is not needed at all. The battery will get damaged and it will charge to unwanted values. So to tackle that situation, I have found a solution: diode. Okay, 6 amperes diode is what I'm going to use to change this into an auto disconnect excitation. So at the start, the battery is going to feed the rotor winding of this alternator some voltage, but as soon as this alternator gains voltage, the generated voltage more than the voltage of the battery itself, the diode will act as an open switch with no current flowing to the battery and all of it flowing to the rotor itself. Okay, so for that I will have to make 2 changes. So the first is placing the diode. The black portion, not the silver one, is positive for the diode. So positive from the battery will be connected to the positive of the diode and negative will be connected to the green terminal. Okay, connected. Okay, now comes the self-excitation part, in which I'm going to use this resistance wire again, because I have to feed the rotor winding after all. Okay, so let's do that also. You can see some voltage on the multimeter screen. That's the voltage being fed to the rotor winding and decreasing because the battery is getting discharged. Okay, keep watching the display screen, guys. Okay, yeah, you saw once again. Now guys, for final testing this third method, let's connect some load to it. So guys, here I'm going to use this 12 volts 60 watts bulb, which means it's going to consume 5 amperes. To separate the terminals from touching each other. Battery connection, negative to negative, done. Positive to diode positive, done. Oh, I have to remove this first. I haven't connected multimeter, so yeah, let's check it without the multimeter. Too many connections now. Rope winding. Keep watching the bulb. It is not going to glow very bright, first of all because it's going to be hand rotation, and second, I am outside in the lawn, so it is very bright over here. Okay, yeah, you saw it worked. Now guys, achieving the self-excitation mode is much more easier. Once again. Now guys, although this is the final method, I still have not created the flow of electricity from the alternator to the battery for charging it at the same time when the alternator is running. So I have to charge the battery also, which is a little bit electronic circuitry type. I will have to make a feedback circuit with a step down voltage conversion that is required to charge a 3.7 volts battery. So that we'll see in one of my upcoming videos. Now guys, I also have to measure the amps that this alternator is generating, pointing the meter towards 10 amperes mode. Although the alternator is 90 amps, but still I'm going to do that. Terminals have been connected. Now remember guys, this multimeter can measure current only up to 10 amps, after which, although it might show measurement, but the fuse might just open because of reaching the maximum limits. So let's try the current measurement anyways. Keep watching the display screen, guys. Okay, 8 amperes. Now let's go a little hard on it. Okay, 9.5 amperes. Let's disconnect it. So that was the current measurement for the alternator. Although it is 90 amperes, but it is not a possibility to produce high amps with hand cranking. Okay, so guys, that was all about today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now the next part will be coming soon, related to the self-excitation and automatic battery charging along with the running of alternator. Here what you see is a 12 volts car alternator. You can see that at the back of it there is no 3-phase rectifier because I took it out since I converted this into a 3-phase brushless DC motor. Now guys, a car alternator produces 12 volts at an RPM of around 2000 or more. And my target is to produce 12 volts at 3 times less than rated RPM, which is somewhere around 700 RPM. So guys, these 4 are the wires coming out from the armature winding. Now among these 4 there is one tapping point because it is a star connected winding. Since this terminal is the thicker one, so the probability is high for the tapping point to be this one. So let's remove it. So guys, here you can see the tapping point. The remaining 3 are normal. All the wires are coming on and joining at this point. So what I have to do is desolder it and remove the tapping. Now guys, the armature winding of this alternator contains 3 separate windings. Now you see here 6 wires. Okay, 1, 2, 3, the smaller one, 4, 5 and 6. Now these 6 wires are from 3 coils. So guys, it's time to replace the brushes back at the back of this alternator again. Okay, so guys, now the wiring has been done and also space has been created for installing the new wires. Let's install it. So guys, to connect the brushes back again, all you have to do is push them inside and keep them held back with a metal or thin metal piece or oil pin. Okay, so one is already in, as you can see. The other one is held back. Okay, so guys, the case has been installed as before. Now I have to remove this metal wire to make the brush get in contact with the slip ring. Okay, so now it's in contact. Okay, so guys, the alternator is all set for testing. So the phase wires will be connected in series to increase the overall armature winding voltage per phase. So 3 phases will be connected in series. So guys, here as you can see that I'm using a UPS battery, 12 volts, a 7H chloride. So I've connected the terminals from the UPS battery to the brush slip ring terminals, red and blue. Although one wire is not connected, that I will connect afterwards. And the wires from the alternator have been connected in series, and the final output is appearing on this green wire and this black wire. So here what I have is a multimeter pointing towards 200 volts AC mode to measure the generated voltage from the alternator. So let's do the connections and do the test. Okay, black to black, although it does not matters because the voltage coming out from the alternator is going to be AC, so polarity does not matters at the moment. So the wires have been connected, meter is pointing towards 0.0 volts, and one wire from the lead acid battery has been connected to the brushes. Now let's connect the other wire too and then move the shaft to see some generated voltage, and after that I'm going to do some rope rotation. So 0 volts. So maximum that I did was 3 volts with hand rotation. Okay, the thread has been wound. Now I have to touch the terminal to the battery. Okay, the connection has been made. Keep watching the screen. Whoa. So guys, as you saw that I generated around 14 volts AC. With the help of this alternator with simple rope rotation, which is really awesome, which means that the series connection, the modification that I did are actually working. A little higher RPM, somewhere around 2000, and it is going to produce 36 volts. So guys, this is the Royal Enfield headlamp bulb that I'm going to use to connect it to this alternator and test its power. Connecting this wire. Okay, go. Okay, so guys, this is a single phase rectifier, 35 amperes, which I'm going to connect. So as you can see here, the plus positive terminal, and this is the AC. The black and red are the AC. If this one is AC, then the diagonal opposite is also AC. So these two will be connected to the black and green terminal from the alternator. One is done. Comes the second one. That also is done. Now finally the output will be DC and will appear on blue and black. So let's connect a meter again. So guys, as you can see, I have connected the rectifier and the terminals of the meter, and now it is pointing towards 20 volts DC mode. Although this brushes and the rotor system has not been excited, I will connect the wires. So I wound the thread. Now it's time to connect the blue terminal, the rotor winding. Okay, that being done, watch the meter screen. So it was 11.5 volts DC. A little bit voltage went because of the forward biasing, around 1.4 volts. And now guys, since the output is DC, I can also measure the output current since I have changed the winding connections. Let's see the impact of that. Okay, watch the screen. Around 5.81 amperes is what I produced by the rope rotation test. So the total power that I produced was around 72 watts. So guys, here what you see are 3 rectifiers, 35 amperes, single phase, which will be connected to the output terminals of the alternator. This is a 38 watts solar panel. Now I am going to measure its voltage. You can see I have pointed out the meter towards 200 volts DC mode because its voltage is going to be more than 20. As you can see, it's 20.1 volts. Now measuring its current, and this panel is very old, almost 8 to 9 years old, and you can see it is still producing 1.5 amperes DC. Now this is a 60 watts 12 volts car headlamp bulb. 60 watts meaning that it will take somewhere around 5 amperes from a DC source. So I have connected the solar panel output terminals, and as you can see that it is not glowing because obviously the current from the solar panel is not high enough. Now the three rectifiers are here on which the base I will keep the vise, and the vise is for mounting the alternator, and the three-phase wires independent windings will be connected to the three independent rectifiers, and the output of the rectifier will be connected in series to increase the voltage at the same RPM 3 times. The final output will appear on this blue and red terminal, red being positive and blue being the negative terminal. You can see the brush terminals are still not connected, red and blue. These two wires will be connected to the output from the solar panel, which this video is about. So let's connect the output of the rectifier to the multimeter in 20 volts DC mode to measure the voltage being generated by the alternator after its excitation with the solar panel. So the solar panel wires have been connected to the brush or rotor terminals of the alternator, and the alternator rotor winding is excited now. Now let's wound the thread and measure the generated voltage with the help of the multimeter, and as you can see the generated voltage was 9.22 volts. Let's try once again a little harder, and as you can see the voltage has increased by 10.25 volts DC. Now since the output from the rectifier is direct current, so I can also measure the current 10 ampere mode. Okay, keep watching the display screen, and as you can see the current was as high as 7.57 amperes. Once again, yeah, this time it was not that high, 5.18 amps. Now I'm going to extend the final output wires from the rectifier set and connect a 60 watts car headlamp bulb and try if this setup can glow this bulb 60 watts. And initially you saw that this bulb did not glow from the output terminals of the solar panel. Let's see if this way it glows. And as you can see that it is glowing. You might see that it is glowing really dim, but it is very bright and it's 12 at the noon. So for that reason, even though it is glowing really bright, and still you cannot see it because it's very bright in the sun. Now this is a 12 volts to 220 volts UPS transformer that I'm going to use to step up the output wire, to step up the output voltage from the alternator, the generated voltage. You can see the windings have been connected in series. Let's connect again the solar panel terminals to the brush terminals, and the final output will be connected to the rectifier. You can see here the weather is very cloudy, so I have to wait for the sun for better excitation of the rotor winding. At present there is no sun. Now it is, and you can see that the voltage generated was 14.2 volts. Again no sun, and I'm going to try to glow the bulb. You can see the bulb isn't glowing because the solar panel isn't feeding the rotor winding enough. And now it is glowing because now the output from the solar panel is good enough for a 100 watts bulb to glow. So guys, now what I'm going to do is excite the rotor of field winding with a 7H UPS battery and step up the armature overall output voltage with the help of a 220 volts UPS transformer. And to the output terminals, I'm going to connect a multimeter pointing towards 750 volts AC. I'm going to follow the same procedure of winding the thread and connecting the two terminals of the brushes to the battery. Winding is excited, watch the screen, and you can see the generated voltage is somewhere around 234 volts. Here you can see 272 volts on the second try. Now I'm going to try the same 100 watts bulb inside the room, not in the sun. It's a 220 volts 100 watts usual incandescent bulb. Terminals have been connected to the UPS output. Winding has been excited. Keep watching the bulb, and as you can see, it is glowing bright. Let's turn off the lights and try again. And you can see that it is much brighter now. Cool. So I'm removing the bulb and connecting a simple 9 watts LED bulb. It is glowing really bright, and also it is not hard enough for me to glow the bulb by rotating the alternator. This is a 200 watts LED halogen that I'm going to try and glow if this alternator can handle this big load. So every wire has been connected. Okay, you can see that it is easily glowing to full potential, the LED halogen light. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to convert this 12 volts 120 amps car alternator into a DC motor, a brushless DC motor. Okay, now guys, an alternator has two windings. One for the armature that is going to generate electricity, which is in the three-phase format, 1 2 3 star connected, and that is the center point. And these two wires are for the rotor of field winding that induces EMF in the armature winding. So unlike our normal brushless motors, it does not contain permanent magnets. So for that reason, we will have to give external supply to the field, which is not the case with our normal BLDC motors. Now guys, this is a normal BLDC motor from an electric rickshaw. Now guys, you might have seen in my previous videos that I operated this motor as a BLDC motor, and I only connected these three wires for running it by using this no hall sensor type of controller circuit, BLDC controller circuit. And that was because the field part of this BLDC motor is made with neodymium magnets, so the field does not require any external power source, which is not the case with the alternators. Now guys, here in alternators, two separate wires are present, this red and blue one, to excite the field winding, so that the electromagnet inside can become a very strong large magnet and induce EMF in the armature poles. So if we are going to run this as a motor, we first need to magnetize the field winding and then use these three wires from this no hall sensor type of BLDC motor controller and connect these three wires to these three terminals of the alternator. And if everything goes mathematically correct, then this alternator should run as a normal motor. There is one more catch. The current rating of the armature winding for this alternator is 120 amperes, while the maximum current handling capability of this circuit is only 20 amperes. So you have to be careful not to connect large battery to this circuit, otherwise the circuit is going to get damaged. Now guys, here I'm going to use these two as the power source for running alternator as a motor. So this is a 12 volts battery from a bike, and this is a 15 volts laptop charger, 15 volts 3 amperes. Now I'm using such a low power source because I don't want to overload this BLDC motor controller circuit, and also I really like the circuit, I don't want to damage it, so I'm a little overprotective. So let's start the connection part. Okay, so guys, here as you can see that I have done all the connections. I've connected the laptop charger to this circuit. Now all I have to do is power up the field winding of this alternator. And for that, I'm going to use this bike battery. So the positive wire will be connected over here. Also at present it is at the lowest mode, which is the off mode. I will have to turn that knob to start the motor. Okay, yeah. Now it is connected. It is very tight now. Let's turn the knob and see if it starts. Yeah, you can see that it is working.